Respected distinguished professors and guests, a very good afternoon to one and all. Today is the second day of FTP on agriculture, environment, and climate exchange. Every new day brings it with it another chance to change the life. I am cordially welcome Dr. S. Geeta Ma'am, Director, Center for Plant Breeding and Genetics, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Coimbatore. Her area of specialization are rice breeding, salinity breeding, sugarcane breeding, pulses breeding, and molecular marker assisted breeding. She has 31 years of research and teaching experience. Dr. S. Geetamam served as Professor and Head Department of Crop Improvement in ADAC and RI Trichy, Professor and Head in National Pulses Research Center, Vamban, and Krishi Vigyan Kendra at Vamban, Project Director for Farm Women Knowledge Center at ADAC and RI Trichy, Dean of Dhanlakshmi Srinivasan Agriculture College, Perambalur. He served as a member of Research Project Approval Committee of 13 research stations under the control of Tamil Nadu Rice Research Center, Adurai, and she was the member of Task Force Committee of DST and DPT. She is the reviewer for plant science journals. She published 5 books with ISBN and 2 books without ISBN, and she published 73 articles in international and national journals. She attended more than 15 conferences and symposium. Under her guidance, 5 of them completed PhD, and she visited 4 countries. Let me invite a learned professor, Dr. S. Geeta Ma'am, to deliver the topic about plant breeding for food security. Ma'am, the session is over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marishwari, for the nice introduction. I really congratulate the organizers for arranging for this kind of webinar, even in the harsh situation of this corona. And I have to appreciate all the participants also for the thirst for the science as well as interest in the science, and also for updating their knowledge even in the severe crisis caused by this corona outbreak. And I understand there is the audience and the participants is in a heterogeneous group. I guess they are from botany and chemistry and many basic sciences groups also. So I would try my level best to make this presentation interesting and also understandable to everyone. So with this, I'm going for my presentation. So my outline of presentation will be just I'll be giving a brief introduction about this topic and what is food security, and I'll be touching upon the role of green revolution in food security and plant breeding. For some of, I think few of our plant breeders are also participating from TNAU, and the rest of the participants, I'll give a small introduction about plant breeding and the role of plant breeding in food security. And I would like to emphasize or inform the audience that I am also a plant breeder, and I'll be explaining about the role of our Tamil Nadu Agricultural University in food security and the role of TNAU in developing climate resilient crop varieties, and how food security is achieved, and status of India in buffer and export of food grains, and I'll be concluding my presentation. So coming to the introduction, if you see this slide, see our country, our India, we can be so proud that we are in the 7th rank as well as the satellite or space research is concerned globally, and we are more strong as far as our military is concerned. So we are the number 4 globally in active frontline personnel, number 4 in the possession of so many number of military tanks, to attack the enemies and to defend ourselves. And if you see the total aircraft, there also we are in the 4th rank, and I need not say about the submarine status. And not only the defense and not only the research, India is in the 7th position as far as biggest economies is concerned. Globally, we are in the 6th or 7th rank. This is the latest figure. Yes, so we are so proud, but see, ours is the most populous country. See, please take the note of it, my dear participants. By 2020, we'll be outbeating China also. So far, China is ranking. You can see this red bar is for China and yellow is for India. And it is estimated that by 2022, we will be outbeating China as far as this population is concerned. So why it is worrying me as a plant breeder, or why it is worrying us as for the policy makers? See, when the population is increasing simultaneously, we have to boost the food production, food grain production from presently achieved food grain production of 250 million metric tons to 333 million metric tons by 2030. Okay, what is the problem, you may ask? See, this additional increase in the food grain production has to be achieved with the existing 540 million acres without a change in the yield. So globally, this is the picture. So what I want to convey here is, one side population is increasing, so our committed responsibility is to provide food for all. But how to achieve this food for all with the limited availability of the arable land? So this particular slide shows, see, when we were in 1960, 1 hectare of arable land was sufficient to feed 3.3 people. So 1 hectare approximately, when you cultivate the food, it was sufficient to feed 3 people. But at the same time, the same 1 hectare has got the pressure to feed the 7.3 people because of the population increase. Now by 2020, 1 hectare has to feed 9 people. See, 3 times increase in the population. And I should say here, when there is an increase in the population, there is also decrease in the arable land also. See, this is one example. Tanjavur in 2007, you can see so much of, it's a satellite picture. You can see so much of green patches, confirming agriculture was very intense. More agricultural lands were available for cultivation. Now you see in 2000, it is in the case of 2014. If I take the recent picture of 2020, I would be hardly finding some green patches here. So this is supposed to be the rice bowl of Tamil Nadu, main Kaveri Delta zone, there itself, where there is no that much problem as far as availability of irrigation water is concerned. They are all traditional farmers. Still, you just see the urbanization has led to the decrease in the arable land. So this is just an example. If you visit all the districts or all the states or all the countries, similar is the trend. And globally, not only for India, not only for Tamil Nadu, it is globally the food crisis is there. See, globally, we expect by 2050, 9.1 billion population will be there. That is approximately 34% of the growth rate of the population. But we have to feed all of them under the constraints of the climate change and also very limited availability of water. See, what they predict is, because of this greenhouse effect and because of this climate change, there will be 4% increase in the temperature, and for every 1% increase in the temperature, there will be 10% reduction in total food production. Okay, so we have two challenges as far as as indicated by this particular slide. You can see because of the temperature rise, there will be a threatening of reduction of agricultural grain production, while at the level of 10% reduction for every 1% increase in temperature. At the same time, we have to achieve 2.4% increase in crop production with 50% decrease in the availability of the water. So these are all the challenge. So now I'll come to the main topic, food security. So I can simply say food security is so the availability of food, accessibility of the food for everyone, and also affordability of the food for everyone. So access by all people at all times to enough food for an active, healthy life. This is what the definition of food security says. So all people at all times have both physical and economic access to the basic food they need. So, when we review the status of food security globally, so you can see all the European countries, Canada, are showing the best performance, and America and China, Russia are showing somewhat good performance. So, coming to our state, our country, this is India. This is moderate performance, but still don't lose your heart. So this has happened in spite of the sea here and all the population growth is not there. Okay, but here on the initial slides itself, I have clearly indicated how the population growth is progressing in India and China. In spite of that excessive population, we have achieved at least moderate level of food security. Hats off to all the scientists and the policymakers. And you can see this is a recent report, India's 1920 food grain production to hit a record high of 291.95 million tons. So don't be afraid, we are safe only. And coming to the agricultural productivity and food security, India has the second highest percentage of total arable land in the world. It has the world's largest areas under wheat, rice and cotton cultivations. We are the number one as far as the area under wheat, rice and cotton are concerned. It is also the largest producer of milk, pulses and spices. So, and you can see the output of food grains over years for the past 5 years, it is showing increasing trend only. So in 2015, it is 264, now that it is 291. So we are more bothered about our own state also, no issue. See here also the arable land has got decreased. It is going on decreasing over the years. 1950, it was somewhat 4759 lakh hectares. Now that it is only 34.59 lakh hectares, but still we are able to achieve higher food production. See, this dips may be due to the severe drought we have experienced during 2016, 2012 and some more years. So this dip is mainly due to the drought, but generally the trend you can see the increased level of food production. And major achievements in agriculture in the 20th century is the population has tripled, food grain production increased to over fourfold. This is what very important. Our per capita income also has doubled. So this particular graph clearly shows future demand and supply of food grain, the estimator from. You can just visit this particular website. You will get the information here. See, this is the demand. So two types of estimates they have used. This is red and green or estimates. See, we are comfortable only. We are over and above the demand. We are able to supply the food grains. So here also arable land available in India per person is during 1950 it was 0.3 hectares, but the same was reduced to 0.17 hectares. So coming to green revolution, so how it happened? See, 1950 just 1 hectare was 1 hectare was sufficient to feed 3 people, but now we require the same 1 hectare, but it has to feed 9 people. But still all the graphs have shown, all the slides have shown our food production is in increasing trend. Even though the population is increasing, our food production also has increased 4 times when you compare with the 1950 to 2019 or 20. How this magic happened? 4 times increase in food production. How it happened? So there comes the role of green revolution. So see, at this moment itself, we have to bow our head, or we have to gratefully think about Dr. Norman Borlaug, who is the father of green revolution. Because without him, whatever food security, whatever sustainability in food production, we couldn't have achieved. So all the credits go to him only. And see, in 1950s and 60s, there was a prediction that there will be a looming famines. But it did not happen during 1960 as predicted by the many policymakers and the scientists. But how it happened, how we got escaped from this famine, which was almost, it was fixed that we are going to suffer from famine and other things, but it didn't happen because of this green revolution. So, as already I told you, he is Norman Borlaug. He is the father of green revolution. What he made is, so his logic is to make the plants of rice or wheat to be responsive, to be more responsive to the inputs, especially to the fertilizers, so that the plant can give the best out of its own potential. Okay, that is what the basic logic behind this green revolution. So whatever varieties we had during the time of 1950 or 1960, they are all just a kind of land race. They will be giving the grains, but it will not be so much, not matching with its potential. That is, they cannot respond, they cannot improve their potential. The breeders or whoever may be, the farmers could not improve its potential. So the Norman Borlaug, what he thought is, so if you tailor the plant, if you tailor the plant type, so that it can give the response, it can show the response to the fertilizer and take more food, more nutrition, thereby giving out more grains also. So whatever varieties we had been growing during 1950s, 60s were very tall, very long duration. See, only hardly 2 crops you can raise, hardly 1 crop you can raise. Very tall, they will lodge in the field. So such defects were rectified by this man, Norman Borlaug. He just reduced the height of the plant so that they become dwarf or semi-dwarf, and they become very sturdy also. The plants were so sturdy, they didn't lodge also, and they had more hunger for nutrition or the fertilizer. Thereby, they could absorb more nutrients, respond to the nutrients, and also giving out all the nutrients in the form of more grains, thereby increase the food production. See, the initial plant type of rice was like this. So what he made is, he reduced the height and he made the plant in such a way, he engineered the plant in such a way that all unnecessary tillers, all unnecessary foliage were reduced, and still it was improved in the modern plant breeding methods. Only very much required foliage was there in the plant, and minimum number of tillers but more number of grains. So for all this, the basic idea or the basic concept was derived from Norman Borlaug. He just introduced one gene called the dwarfing gene, DGO gene. It was available in one of the Taiwan variety, Taichung. So he transferred that gene to these kind of varieties and made these varieties to behave like this. He transformed these varieties by way of introducing that particular gene, and these plants become small, semi-dwarf. So since then, you can see this even from 20th century or 21st century in all the countries, China, India, and the world. If you take the cereal yield is going on increasing. There is no decrease at all. It is going on increasing over the years. So, and this Green Revolution of 1960s and Hybrid Revolution made India self-sufficient in food grains. What they claim is, so because of this Green Revolution, 2.5% increased food grain production could be achieved when there was a population rate of 2.1%. So per capita availability of food grain was also increased during this time. So Green Revolution has combated hunger in the world. See, 1950, 60, 70, 2000. See, at that time, more of export was there. See, million ton, 4 point. So it got reduced. Now, 2000, we have not any, it is import. We have not imported any food grains. We are self-sufficient, and we have got sumptuous amount of buffer stock also. So that is the gift given by the Green Revolution, and what they claim is percentage of food insecure people also has fallen from 37% to 17%. This graph clearly shows the number of food insecure people also has got reduced globally. And this I wanted to mention because of this Green Revolution. The first rice variety in Tamil Nadu released through this Green Revolution is ADT 27. They used to call it as radio rice. And after that, there was an introduction from Erie Philippines IR8, So that IR8 is the variety here. See, this is the parent. They have modified this particular parent to kind of semi-dwarfism in IR8. So because this farmer from Tamil Nadu, Thiru Ganesan, since he was experiencing or he was able to get more rice yield from this IR8, you would be really surprised. He named his son with the same name. He gave the name to the son as IR8. So that kind of great impact this IR8 has made in Tamil Nadu, not only in Tamil Nadu, India and globally. That much sudden increase in yield. Farmers were so happy and consumers were also not very happy. So food was sufficiently available for everyone thanks to Green Revolution. So under annual reductions in arable land, plant breeding will, so now I'll come to the role of plant breeding in ensuring food security. So this is the current system. So we have to increase the yield to 250%. See, already I told you that there will be a reduction in available arable land. There will be 5% decrease. And okay, now we are very much aware of possibilities in reducing the losses, grain losses, even during storage and other things. So that by that we can increase the availability to 20% and improved farm management practices like fertilizer schedule and maintaining the number of plants or the population in the field, or with the plant protection measures, you can still increase the yield by 50. But 80% of the share in the increase of this 250 has to come from the plant breeding and biotechnology. So that is what Godfrey et al. Says. Under annual reductions in arable land, plant breeding will play an essential role in feeding 9 billion people sustainably by 2050. So very great or key role of plant breeder is there in enhancing the food production and also ensuring the food security. So what is, before that I have to just tell you what is plant breeding because it's a heterogeneous group. The art and science of changing plant form or plant shape or plant type like that. So, and or the performance for the benefit of humankind. Initially I told you very tall plant, you can make it as dwarf or semi-dwarf, or infuse some kind of resistance for any kind of pest or for the disease, or increase the nutritive value of the grains, like increase the iron content or increase the zinc content in rice or in wheat, or increase the capacity for the non-lodging grains. So it is an art as well as a science. So we are changing the plant to the desirable level so that we can achieve the greater output, that is output in the sense greater production, grain production through this breeding method. So earlier, see, I would say even the plant breeding is practiced for more than 10,000 years. Initially our farmers were the real first breeders who selected the plants wherever they saw. So if they felt that it is very superior or it will be useful for them, they just isolated that plant and multiplied that particular plant. So they were the initial breeders. So initially we had simply a selection from the available biodiversity. After this green revolution or other things, we changed our breeding design or breeding program so that it gives the targeted yield or targeted trait. So plant breeders' response to global changes, again I am repeating, so this is a great challenge for the plant breeders because of this climate change. So when there is a temperature increase, one particular type of population of pest will increase. When the temperature becomes so low, when some type of fungal pathogens will take a bigger hand, and growing population, and there will be a scarcity of water, less arable land is prevailing throughout the world. So under these circumstances, plant breeders have a challenge to stabilize and increase the yield despite a changing climate. So whatever varieties so to simplify, I forgot to mention plant breeding, I can say this is the development of varieties. I think most of the participants would be familiar with some of the rice varieties. You would have heard about Ponni varieties, Andhra Ponni, Karnataka Ponni, that is the variety. Or you would have heard about IR8, because IR8 is mostly used in many of the Tamil movie songs also. So there are so many number of varieties. So developing such type of product is the job of the plant breeder. So plant breeding, you can just equate it with the variety, then whatever I am conveying to you, that will be more understandable to you. So the breeder has to develop the varieties meeting out all these challenges. So this is what happening. See, for 10,000 years, farmers and breeders have been developing improved crops. For 150 years, plant scientists and breeders have improved plant breeding on a scientific basis. Initially, it was merely seeing, saving. So if the farmer saw any plant seems to be very good, he'll simply multiply that particular plant. But all this scientific plant breeding took place within this 150 years. Today, farmers feed at least 10 times more people using the same amount of land as 100 years ago. Okay, 10 times number of population is fed by the farmers than it occurred before some 100 years. So by 2050, we will need 50% more food to feed a population of 9.8 billion. So there is tremendous advancement in plant breeding also. Initially, it was a selection and just introduction. We get some wheat varieties from Simit, Mexico, and grow it like that. After that, so we have to gratefully think our Mendel, father of genetics, who paved way to understand the genetics, and thereby we were able to formulate the breeding program. After that, it take a different dimension. Our whole of plant breeding activities took a different dimension. We went for recombination breeding, hybridizing, hybridizing and mutation. It is very all this gamma rays are beneficial for the population, human beings, because with this radiation techniques we are able to evolve so many number of varieties, especially in groundnut and rice. We have released many varieties using this radiation. And after that, we went in depth understanding the real molecule that is responsible for all this inheritance or expression of the traits, that is studying understanding the structure of DNA, inheritance patterns and other things. Thereon we went to genetically modified plants, and we started using this molecular DNA markers for our plant breeding and targeted breeding. So plant breeding has contributed to more than 50% of increased crop productivity during the last 30 years. So even though chronic hunger is still widespread in many developing countries, the global proportion of hungry people was reduced from 50% in the first half of the 20th century to around 11% today. So that is the success of the plant breeding. And here you can see 1961, the crop yield was mainly due to other inputs like fertilizer and other plant protection methods. But after this green revolution, you can just see the role of the crop varieties in giving the higher yield. So that is the outcome of the green revolution. So as I'm not only increasing the yield, because per unit productivity is increased using the high yielding varieties, more land, that is, see, suppose initially wheat was cultivated in 5 million hectares, because they are able to achieve the greater yield even with 2 million hectares because of using the high yielding varieties. Rest of the 3 million hectares could be spared for other crops. So that is also one of the advantages or the impact made by the plant breeding. You can see the spared land because of the use of the high yielding varieties that was developed by the breeders. So plant breeding contributed to around 20% of the yield growth. See, in all the countries, you can see the cereal yield was in the increasing trend, and you can see the undernourishment is going in the decreasing trend. Because of this yield increase, this undernourishment was cut down. Okay. So role of plant breeding in ensuring food security. Initially I told you, actually food security is availability of food to everyone, affordability of food and accessibility. So the role of plant breeder or the plant breeding is playing a major role in case of availability by making or by evolving high yielding varieties which can give more grain yield. So the grains or the food is plentifully available. So of course, there is a role of policy makers also, and also the social needs, because social what food they prefer rice or ragi or cholam or kambu or like that. And affordability, of course, why I am giving 3 plus here is because this is simple logic. Whenever there is sufficient produce is available, naturally the price of the produce will go down. That is what, because you would have experience for tomato. See, whenever during the summer the price of the tomato will be slashed like anything, because in the market will be glutted by the tomato because of the high productivity during summer. So with that logic, I have given affordability plant breeding gives is also there, but of course it is decided by the policy makers and the government and also social needs. I should decide whether I have to spend for the food or not. My priority will be something different also. And accessibility, I don't think this plant breeders or plant breeding cannot make any a big role in the accessibility, but it all rests with the policy makers and the social needs. So 1950 stagnation in agriculture, and in 1960-80 reduction in import in food grains, and coming to 80-2000 we became the net exporter of agricultural production. 2000s onwards, the government started giving 50% subsidy for the cultivation of high yielding varieties and improved agro techniques. So this is what the scenario of agriculture in India. So more banks, initially there were no financial support for the farmers. Now that they are giving financial assistance, because you will get more output also, because you are using high yielding varieties. Naturally you will get good amount of profit if it is done properly, so that the farmer will be able to repay the amount if everything goes on very well. And of course we have to take into the consideration of the environment and also the rainfall and the temperature. So everything is optimum. Definitely the farmer could get highest yield, so that it could be transformed into the form of money, and the same he can also get the profit, and he will be also be able to repay. So the agriculture has become like a business. So usually in 1960s or 80s, only the banks were willing to provide loans for startups or the industries. Now that it is coming forward to provide financial support for agri business startups also. That is the power of the agriculture as well as the plant breeding. So I'll simply say about in understandable ways strategies in plant breeding. So the breeder initially he or she will scan the germplasm. Germplasm means already existing diversity, biodiversity. I can't say it as a biodiversity. Already existing gene pool, already existing product. So with that we will scan, which is good. See, even in the family of 5, each one is looking different. Even though 5 children are there from the same parent, each child will be looking differently. So that kind of variation is the treasure or the first what I can say, that will be the any breeder will be looking for such kind of variation to pick it up for using it in or her his or her breeding program. So after finding the scanning the germplasm, he will go for some kind of crossing, that is hybridization, or he may go for some kind of mutations, or he may take the help from the molecular biologist, and finally he will develop a variety and go for multi-location trials. See, when the variety is developed, it is not done with a single location or single trial. So to develop a variety, minimum of 8 years a breeder takes, and after that it has to go to minimum of 200 locations across the state. So after confirming the performance across 200 locations only, it will be allowed for cultivation, or it will be allowed for release, commercial release. See, when the breeder is doing some 10 to 20 cross combination, initially he will be having some 50,000 plants. That will be gradually out of this 50,000 plants. After 8 or 10 years, he will come out with one variety. Over the years, he will be reducing the number of plants, whichever is not expected or not up to the mark or not matching the targeted trait, they will simply discard. So simultaneously they will be looking not only for the yield, at each stage the plant breeder will be checking the plant type, whether it is resistant to pests or diseases, or it is having good phenotypic acceptability. See, it is not that the breeder is simply releasing and farmer taking. Farmers should accept it. We know what are all the expectation of the farmers, and we will invite the farmers also whether it is up to your expectation, like that. So initially after 10 years, one variety will be released. So these are all the different types of crop breeding method. This is hybridization, cross breeding. See, here this is a dark red and this is size is more. So the breeder wants to combine these two, dark red and the size. Now he comes out with the bigger sized fruits with the dark color. Similarly in mutagenesis, I like the citrus very much, but I want this aerials or the fruit should be dark red. So I simply go for some radiation technique and make this plant like this. And I suppose I don't want the seeds in my fruit like grapes or the watermelon. I go for the polyploidy, so doubling the chromosomes, so I achieve the seedless nature, and I want to transfer one trait from radish to cabbage because these two are not possible. I want to transfer the male sterility nature from this radish to cabbage. I go for the protoplast fusion. I go to the cellular level. I just take the tissue of the leaf, isolate the protoplast, make it recombining or fusing with each other, thereby allowing the exchange of the genetic material. And transgenesis, you are all very much aware of this. BT cotton, you are at least once in a week you are reading in the paper, and using this transgenesis even we can achieve disease-free fruit types, disease-free plant types, and etc. And recent trend is genome editing. So it is like targeting a specific trait, makes some alteration in the sequence of the DNA, thereby change the phenotype. See, initial maize were like this. Okay, corn. After that, it became like this. Now, whatever we are cultivating, this is of this. So this is the modern corn variety. So the initial tomato types are so small because of the efforts of the breeders. Now that we are getting this sized tomatoes for our consumption. So breeders designed the crop. So the initial paddy was like this. You just see hardly some 50 grains or thing. But now we have made the plant through the breeding approaches. You can just see even in a single panicle you can count 400 grains. This is one of the reasons why or how we have achieved higher productivity in rice. So this I have already explained to you. And similarly in wheat, the breeders again tailor the plant. He takes care of the see if it is for drought or salinity, he will tailor the plant in such a way for the root traits, or he want to achieve maximum photosynthesis, he will tailor the leaf type. And the breeders will be looking for the plants with the short tassel because a single short 1 centimeter or 5 centimeter tassel is enough to give the pollen for the fertilization of this crop. Why you want to waste your energy by having large tassel and other things? So and large crops like that. Similarly for the wheat, erect types so that more light could be absorbed by the plants. See, this is one interesting slide. See, over the years, these were all the local types, and through the breeding efforts, from this level, we have come to this level. So this achievement has been made by the breeders. See, now you count, see the size of the panicle, a number of grains per panicle. So all this has happened because of the breeders, and also you see the yield level. Now that we are touching 2.5 times increased. Okay, so 44. Now this is the average yield. Some places even you can get some 4 tonners, that is 4,000 kgs also. And similarly, so even though it's not a food crop, it is a cotton. So when we think about cotton, there is some kind of pest, okay, that is jacid, tattupuchin solvom. So that causes damage to the crop. So in that also we have some wild species which has got like hairy leaves, hairs on the leaves, which prevents the attack of the jacid. So we go for the crossing of these two. So now that you can see this is the donor parent wild species which has got more number of trichomes. We have crossed with these two. Now that you could see the trichome number here. Thereby here this is highly susceptible to jacid. This is resistant to jacid. Now this is also fairly resistant to jacid. Similarly, if you take the red gram, see this is a very tall plant. It is not that much productive. It takes more time also, 6 months, 8 months. Now that we have curtailed, we have designed or tailored the plant type. Now that we have come out with the early maturing short stature red gram. See, this is the hybrid of sunflower. You see the size, we call this as a head. So here the black seeds will be there from which we extract the oil. You see the diameter here. So this is how the breeders make selection and design the crop. And the cowpea you can see this is early maturing. See lesser foliage. We don't want the energy of a plant to be wasted simply in the leaves. Okay, so we want everything to go to the parts. That is a very economic trait. So in that way we have achieved and released the variety also. And you can see the root trait also. This is original. By crossing and using molecular marker techniques, we are able to increase the root length. This is very much required whenever you grow the crop under highly water starving conditions. So initial basic material for the plant breeding is, as I already told, it is already available varieties, land races, germplasm, everything. And you can see this a seed vault or Svalbard Global Crop Diversity Trust. This is a very cool area. They have preserved all the material here. I am very proud to share with you that in TNAU we have Ramaya Gene Bank. We are maintaining nearly 27,000 or 28,000 number of crop species, which which is preserved both under medium term storage as well as under long term storage. So 8% of the world's diversity, okay, that is available in India, with even though it occupies only 2.4% of the diversity area. So worldwide there are 47,000 wild species, of which 33 flowering plants are endemic to India. So role of TNAU in food security. So as far as this agriculture crops concerned, we have released 602, and if I add the horticulture crops, it will come to 852. So in rice, we have released 170 varieties, millets 89, small millets 67, cotton 43, sugarcane 38. We have not spared forage crops also. We are interested in feeding human beings as well as animals, and we have been successful in that. We have released 19 forage crops, oil seeds 66. These are all the very popular TNAU varieties, and this TKM6 GEB24 are the universally used rice varieties. These were released from Tamil Nadu. This is Tirur Kuppam 6, and GEB is General Economic Botany from Coimbatore. So almost I can say at least 70% of the rice varieties available in globally will have the blood from these two varieties. And ADT 27 is the first green revolution varieties. And you would have heard about this TMV2 groundnuts. Still, you see, at least it has crossed some 50 years after the release. Still, people in Andhra, Andhra, still they are growing TMV2 and VRA2. There is a great demand. And this MCU5 is one of the very popular cotton varieties. Using this variety only, after that many number of cotton varieties were released nationally. And 671 sugarcane, it is a miracle sugarcane. It was ruling entire Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra for its high sugar recovery. Later on, because of its susceptibility to one of the major diseases, it went out of the picture. So what I would say is, I am coming to Tamil Nadu, the scenario in Tamil Nadu. See, over 10 years, you can see we have achieved nearly 1 ton in grain yield, that is rice yield. We have achieved 1 ton increase. That is because of this popular and very promising varieties, ADT 43, 45, 46, 50, 51. So we concentrate on yield as well as the resistance for. See, I would proudly say whatever variety we release from Tamil Nadu, generally they are able to tolerate heavy load of pest and disease in the field condition. So we give more emphasis for the resistance, inherent resistance for the pest and disease. See, many of us, even though we are exposed to this environment, many of us are not affected by COVID-19. That is inherent immunity like we have. So such kind of plants we want to develop, we have developing. So because of this, see, in millets also we have achieved 1.55 tonnes over a decade, 10 years. Because of these varieties, 1.55 tonnes increase has been achieved. Pulses also, you just see, we have increased minimum 300 kgs per hectare. Oil seeds also, we have achieved 1 tonnes increase over 10 years. All this happened because of the high yielding varieties. And not only that, because of this high yield, high productivity of this high yielding variety, the income generated by the farmer has also increased. Okay, so this is the additional income they are getting. And climate resilience, you see, our Tamil Nadu is mostly it is prone to drought. So very challenging environmental impact for Tamil Nadu is the drought, and fewer places with submergence or waterlogging. And of course, cyclone we cannot avoid. Cyclone also we are prone. See, in Tamil Nadu, 69 districts are vulnerable or accounted to be the vulnerable districts for this climatic change. So water scarcity and also severe water scarcity. See, we mostly depend on Kaveri. So moderate, 1 month it is very significant, and rest of the 8 months the scarcity is severe. So this is what we are experiencing. The temperature is also going on increasing. So not only that, not only the problem due to the water non-availability, not due to the high temperature, and also due to the problem soil because of the over exploitation of the underground water. We are experiencing so much of area is becoming prone to salinity, that is salt content is increasing. You see in Tamil Nadu also we have 3.6 lakh hectares affected by the salinity. See, this is the Tamil Nadu map. You can see the productivity, soil productivity. So most of the area are showing only average level of productivity. This is again a challenge. With this average productivity level, that is soil productivity level, we have to enhance the productivity with the high yielding varieties using good management techniques. So good, you can see these green patches are very rare in the entire map. And alkalinity causes so much of land, so much of loss, at least 15,000 crores of economic loss. So sustainable food production and agriculture under climate change, again it's a question mark, but don't worry, plant breeders are there. So this is one of the status report, agriculture technologies for climate change mitigation and adaptation. There also they mention, in addition to increasing productivity generally, several new varieties and traits offer farmers greater flexibility in adapting to climate change. Okay, so here the role of varieties come, and crops, varieties, traits that are resistant to pests and diseases will improve the producer's ability to adapt to climate change to the extent that these varieties reduce the need for, see, I initially mentioned, isn't it? It's a mandate of TNAU whenever we release the varieties, it is coupled with the resistance for the major pest and disease so that the farmers need not take so many number of pesticide spray or fungicide spray. So the impact of climate change in Tamil Nadu agriculture, frequent cyclone, of course, the breeders have to breed, study plant types which will not lodge even at the time of cyclones, heavy cyclones, rain dark area to southwest monsoon. So we have to breed drought tolerant crop varieties, frequent failure of northeast monsoon and its opposite flood occurrence. So breeding submergence tolerance varieties. For a short time, the plant has to withstand the submergence on the waterlogging condition. And decline in crop area under agriculture, so increase the crop productivity. These are all the challenges or the targeted trait for the breeders, taking into account of the negative impact that is made by the climate change. So we have some climate change varieties in all the crops, we will be seeing it. So for drought, we have some millet varieties, and for salinity, we have varieties in rice, ragi, that is finger millet and Kudirai Valley, and submergence tolerance also, we have 2 varieties. So this is the variety Anna 4, and one more variety we have Co53, which can even give, see, you can see the drought condition, the soil is showing cracks, it is so many days after irrigation. So it was starved for water for many number of days, still it is showing greenness. And so just with the 500 to 600 mm, they are able to give the highest yield. Usually the paddy crop requires 1200 to 1500 mm of water. And we have some early maturing variety that is within 90 days so that it can escape the drought. And this is a sub-1 variety, it can tolerate 15 days of submergence. At the seedling stage, if even the seedlings are covered by the water level, so it is submerged, in that condition for 15 years, it can tolerate that kind of submergence. Again, there is another variety, Co43, it can also tolerate the submergence. And aerobic, we are doing more research, that is very little water but more productivity. So that is our another area of research with the plant breeder. And drought tolerant sorghum variety we have. See, even with 50% of moisture, that is rainfall, it is able to give a fair amount of yield. That is the power of the high yielding variety. See, you can see the rainfall level. Normal is here, it is below normal, still they are able to give some good quantity of grains. And we are doing more research on pearl millet because it has the inherent genetic constitution for tolerate high temperature as well as the drought. We have one composite variety Kambu Koten, which is able to tolerate drought, and we have at least 30-40 numbers of minor millets. I would suggest all the participants to make a note of these varieties because they are very nutritious, and now that many youngsters also have got that health conscious to eat, that is, you reduce the quantity of rice and take more quantity of minor millets, that is than the normal. Definitely it will help you in reducing the obesity also. So, and we have the hybrid of maize which is tolerating drought also. Usually it's a rare phenomena. Usually maize will not be tolerate drought, but we have the hybrids that is tolerating drought also. And we have one cotton variety which is able to grow even with less than 250 mm of rainfall. Usually the cotton crop requires some 700 to 750 mm of water. Even with 250 mm, if you see the roots of this particular variety, it will be going for 2 or 3 meters underneath the soil. And we have some excellent pulse varieties which are maturing very early. So with lesser duration, with lesser water intake, they give more yield and more profit. And another typical situation in delta zone, Kaveri delta zone, rice fallow conditions, they call it as midi ulundu. During the standing crop of the rice before the harvest, they just sow the seeds of the black gram and it is coming up like this. With this we call as rice fallow. So we have evolved varieties for such conditions also. See, this is a bonus crop for the rice farmers. It will fetch you high profit also because black gram are sold at the rate of 60 to 80
Geeta
rupees
ma'am,
per kg. Yes, yes.
Geeta ma'am, will you conclude within 2 minutes?
Yeah, I'm doing.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So we have sufficient buffer stock of food grain, 752 lakh hectares, 752 lakh tons, sufficient for meeting all requirements. And you can see the export over the years to different countries. We are exporting as a donation or with a goodwill, and also commercial export. And so India earns 18,000 crore a year from export of basmati rice. This thanks to the basmati rice breeders. And economic gain, if you see, I have listed out many crops with so much of economic gain also. So we are combining, the breeders combining all sorts of advanced breeding technologies and biotechnological tools to move forward to bring more varieties with higher productivity. So without plant breeding, the main components of green revolution, this is the main component of green revolution process, the food self-sufficiency in many parts of the world could not have been achieved. So great challenge for the breeders to play a key role in ensuring food security in the threat of climate change. And of course, no fears, with advanced breeding technologies supplemented with advanced biotechnological tools, definitely breeders will come out with good varieties in a shorter time. So take home message. So essential platform for sustainable agriculture is the plant breeding. And I would request all the participants who are in the arts group, so there is a great scope for doing basic research in crop plants. So more amount has to be invested in crop business. Of all the things, besides increasing the productivity, please don't waste food or water, and also money, time and talent. So this is the one. Crop improvement by breeding is a continuous process. Those who are engaged in this vital task, that is the plant breeders, have a hand in crop plant evolution and enjoy the pride and privilege of fighting the war against hunger. So with this slide, I am concluding my presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. From your valuable speech, we are aware about the food crisis. We see a lot of difference in Tanjore area in 2007 and 2014 due to the cause of de-aggregation, and knew the information about plant breeding, different crop techniques. crop modification techniques, and very nice presentation, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.